All right, so today we will be talking about metals, nonmetals, metalloids, and where they fall on the periodic table and their physical properties. So if you look below, we have a periodic table shaded blue with its elements. The elements on the periodic table are divided into these categories. You see the metalloids, which are shaded in that purplish violet color there. We kind of refer to it as the staircase. And then over here on the right, we have our nonmetals. And we also have one nonmetal that's fallen off the beaten path over there in the top left, and that is hydrogen. So directions for today, what you're going to be doing, you're going to make a 3-column chart and label those columns metals, nonmetals, or metalloids. As you go through this video, you're going to label the physical and chemical properties of all three. All right, so we're going to start with metals. So you should be on that threefold on the left side, put metals. Here's just some examples. So you have nickel, gold, copper, and rubidium, all on the periodic table there. All right, so what are our properties of metals? So metals appear to the left of the staircase on the periodic table. Most metals are solid at room temperature, meaning that whatever room temperature is, they are a solid state of matter. So one other property of a metal, they have a shiny metallic luster. So their luster is shiny and metallic. And then we have a picture there of cesium, which is element number 55. Another property of metal is they are very ductile. So their ductility, they are ductile, which means metals can be drawn into a wire. So we have some copper wiring there as an example on the right. So they are ductile. Oh, moving around a little crazy there. So properties of metals. So another property of a metal is they are malleable. So remember, malleability is the ability for a metal to be hammered into sheets. So they are malleable. So there's a picture there of some metal that is malleable. Another property of metal is that they have a high melting point. They are also very dense. So metals tend to have a higher density than nonmetals. Another property of metals is that they are very good conductors. So conductivity, metals are good conductors of electricity and heat, both. So metals on the periodic table are able to conduct heat and electricity very well. They're good conductors. Our last property of metals that you're going to put on your threefold brochure there is a chemical property of metal is that its reaction with water and oxygen creates corrosion and rust. So if they are a metal and they have a reaction with water and oxygen, which creates corrosion and rust. Our favorite time, recap time. What are the physical properties of metals? So we just went over them. So you're going to just put down recap time in that column of your brochure where metals are. You're going to write what are the physical properties, and you're just going to have them listed. Moving on to our beautiful, glorious nonmetals. So here's just some examples of nonmetals. You have sulfur, nitrogen, bromine, and selenium as nonmetals. So some properties of nonmetals. So nonmetals are on the right side of the periodic table, right side of the zigzag line there. Although hydrogen is located over on the far left, it is also a nonmetal. But remember, they're labeled by number of protons, and hydrogen only has one, although it only is a nonmetal, even though it's located on the left side. So some properties of nonmetals, they are non-metallic luster. So they're very dull. So sulfur, as you see there, it's not shiny, it doesn't have that luster. So they do not have very much luster. Another property of a nonmetal is they are brittle. So they break easily. That means they are not ductile or malleable. So if they're not ductile or malleable, that means that they're not able to be drawn into a wire, right? And they're not able to be pounded into sheets because they're brittle, so they'll break. Another property of a nonmetal is it has very low density. So remember, density is mass divided by volume. So they don't have a high mass to volume ratio, so they have a low density. And they also have a low melting point. This is why they are poor conductors. So they have a low melting point, and they are poor conductors of heat and electricity. They do not conduct heat and electricity well at all. It's that favorite time again. Recap time. So what are the physical properties of nonmetals? So in that center portion of your three-fold brochure there, your three-paneled brochure, you're going to put this recap time question answer. What are the physical properties of nonmetals? Finally, metalloids, the third section of our brochure. So we have germanium, silicone, polonium, and arsenic, all on the metalloid section of the periodic table. So if you look at the periodic table, they are found around the dark zigzag, which was the staircase. They're on both sides of the staircase. It's a very small group, the metalloids. So the metalloids are metal-like. That's what metalloids means. They have properties of both metals and nonmetals. So there's boron as another example of a metalloid. Some more properties of metalloids. They are solids that can be shiny or dull. So they could possibly be shiny or they could be dull. So they can kind of go both ways. They're okay conductors of electricity and heat. So they're better than nonmetals, which are very poor. They don't conduct heat or electricity well at all. But they're not metals that conduct it really, really well. They're kind of in between. And our last property of a metalloid is it can be malleable and ductile, but not always. So sometimes it can have some malleability and ductility, so it can be able to be pounded into sheets or drawn into a wire, but it doesn't always have to be. Recap time. What are the physical properties of metalloids? So you're just going to give me the physical properties of metalloids, and that should wrap up your three-panel brochure, but not before we have some more recap time. You thought you were done, but you're not. Recap time. If you have a copper-colored material that you can hammer into the shape of a coin, what do you have? Do you have a metal, nonmetal, or metalloid? If a substance can be pulled into thin wires and is a dull tan color, what is it? Is it a metal, nonmetal, or metalloid? So it's dull, but can be drawn into wires. And then our final recap time of the day. If you find something that does not reflect light very well, so it doesn't reflect light, it keeps you warm, and will just tear if you stretch it, what do you have? So it does not reflect light, it keeps you warm, and it tears if you stretch it. Is that a metal, nonmetal, or metalloid? Make sure those answers are on your three-fold, and you are done.